The sharp, stinging cold of a Greenwich winter morning bit at Lila Mae Thompson's exposed skin, even through the thin fabric of her standard-issue blue uniform. She stood precariously on the threshold of the grand double doors, one foot still on the polished mahogany floor of the Vance Estate's stately hall, the other hesitantly on the snow-dusted slate path outside. A delicate silver tray, holding a single perfectly brewed cup of coffee and a matching saucer, felt strangely heavy in her gloved hands. Snowflakes, impossibly fine and numerous, drifted lazily from the iron-grey sky, dusting her blonde braids and the shoulders of her uniform. Beyond the ornate wrought-iron gates, the sprawling grounds, usually a vibrant tapestry of green, lay hushed beneath a pristine blanket of white, stretching towards the distant, elegant stables where two horses, one dark as midnight, the other pure white, stood like statues. Her gaze, however, wasn't truly on the beautiful, unforgiving landscape. It was fixed on something just beyond the frame of the moment, a silent, almost defiant challenge in her wide, intelligent eyes. Inside, looming over her with an unspoken question, stood Mr. Elias Vance. His back was mostly turned, revealing the expensive, intricate pattern of his dark vest, a stark contrast to her own simple attire. He was the master of this domain, the architect of a tech empire, and to Lila Mae a symbol of everything she was not and perhaps could never be. His posture, even from behind, exuded an air of detached authority, a silent judgment that she had learned to interpret through years of similar interactions. She knew what he saw: a maid, a servant, a woman of ample figure whose presence was meant to be functional, not remarkable. She was an invisible cog in the meticulously maintained machinery of his life, a soft, warm body designed for quiet labor, not for the gleaming stages where men like him carved out their destinies. The red of her lipstick, a small defiant splash of color against the pale winter, and her muted uniform, felt like a secret rebellion, a whisper of a vibrant self that only truly existed when she was alone in the quiet alchemy of her kitchen. Every fiber of her being felt the weight of that silent scrutiny, the chilly distance between their worlds, as palpable as the biting winter air clinging to her. She imagined the words forming on his lips, words of expectation, of command, or perhaps of polite dismissal. This moment, suspended between the warmth of the opulent interior and the biting cold outside, felt like a silent interrogation, a test of her worth not just as an employee but as a person. It was the crushing burden of being seen, yet not truly seen, a familiar ache in her chest. If you've ever felt the quiet weight of being underestimated, of having your true capabilities overlooked because of how you look or where you come from, then you understand the pressure building in Lila Mae's chest right now. Feel that pang of injustice? Let it echo in a like or a comment, because this is just the beginning of a story about true value. But to truly understand how Lila Mae Thompson came to stand at the precipice of such a life-altering encounter, one must journey back, not just to that frigid Connecticut morning, but to a life forged in the humble, snow-kissed hills of rural Vermont. She was born in a small town, a place where the seasons dictated the rhythm of life, where community was woven as tightly as the quilts her grandmother used to sew, and where the smell of wood smoke and freshly baked bread was the truest comfort. Her childhood had been marked not by luxury, but by the quiet dignity of hard work, by the lessons learned at her grandmother's side. Grandma Rose, a woman whose hands were scarred by a lifetime of kneading dough and tending gardens, had instilled in Lila Mae a profound respect for the earth's bounty and the transformative power of food. "Cooking ain't just about filling a belly, child," Grandma Rose would often say, her voice raspy with age and wisdom. "It's about feeding the soul. It's about love, about memory, about making folks feel seen and cherished." These words, etched deep into Lila Mae's heart, became her silent mantra, her secret language. She grew up with a figure that, even as a girl, was described by some as sturdy or generous. In a world increasingly obsessed with slenderness, Lila Mae learned early on what it meant to be an outsider, to feel the unspoken judgment in sidelong glances, to hear the hushed whispers that chipped away at her self-esteem. Yet in her grandmother's kitchen, she found sanctuary. There her size didn't matter, only the precision of her knife, the intuition of her palate, and the warmth of her spirit. Grandma Rose's worn recipe book, its pages stained with decades of culinary adventures, became Lila Mae's most treasured possession, a living testament to a heritage of soulful comfort cooking. Life in rural Vermont, however, offered few avenues for a young woman with a passion for cooking, but no formal training, especially with an ailing mother whose medical bills began to pile up like the winter snows. Her mother, sweet-natured and perpetually optimistic, despite her declining health, was Lila Mae's anchor, her reason for striving. The thought of her struggling alone fueled a quiet but fierce determination within Lila Mae. So at the age of 27, she packed her meager belongings, clutching Grandma Rose's cookbook like a lifeline, and made the arduous journey south to the gleaming, manicured lawns of Greenwich, Connecticut. It was a world away from everything she knew, a place of sprawling, opulent estates, and an undeniable current of wealth that felt both intimidating and alluring. The Vance family residence, where Lila Mae secured a position as a housemaid, was an architectural marvel, a testament to modern luxury and impeccable taste. Every surface gleamed, every corridor whispered of hushed elegance, and every room was a curated display of art and expense. It was a place where order reigned supreme, where every employee moved with a quiet efficiency, almost disappearing into the backdrop of the grandeur they maintained. Lila Mae, with her soft, observant eyes and an innate ability to anticipate needs, adapted swiftly. She dusted priceless antiques, polished intricate silverware, and ensured that the vast estate, inside and out, remained a pristine reflection of the Vance name. She was a ghost in blue and white, her presence felt in the sparkling cleanliness, but rarely acknowledged directly. Each dollar she earned cleaning and maintaining a lifestyle so far removed from her own was meticulously saved, sent home to Vermont to ease her mother's burden. The patriarch of this empire, Elias Vance, was in his early 30s, a formidable tech CEO whose name was synonymous with innovation and ruthless ambition. A widower, his grief for his late wife had calcified into an impenetrable shell of corporate focus, leaving little room for emotional messiness or personal connection. His days were a precise symphony of high-stakes board meetings, meticulous market analyses, and an insatiable pursuit of expansion for Vance Technologies. Emotionally, he was a fortress, unbreachable and unyielding. The sole chink in his formidable armor was his 6-year-old daughter, Clara Vance. A pale, often withdrawn child, Clara was a haunting reminder of the wife Elias had lost too soon. Yet, even with her, Elias struggled. Their relationship was tinged with a quiet sadness, exacerbated by Clara's stubbornly picky eating habits. No nanny, no renowned nutritionist, no exasperated chef had ever managed to overcome the child's aversion to food. Meals were a constant battle, a source of endless frustration for Elias, who in his world of data and logic found Clara's inexplicable resistance to nourishment a perplexing and painful enigma. He saw it as another failure, another aspect of his life he couldn't control, much like the grief that still gnawed at him. Lila Mae, though an integral part of the household machinery, existed largely unseen by Elias. Her culinary talents, inherited from generations of Southern comfort cooking, remained largely confined to the staff meals she occasionally prepared. These meals, humble yet infused with a quiet magic, were always met with appreciative murmurs and satisfied sighs from the household staff. A simple chicken pot pie became a feast, a macaroni and cheese a revelation, a vegetable soup a soothing balm on a cold day. Yet her creations rarely, if ever, reached the main dining room, deemed too unsophisticated for the discerning palates of Elias and his high-powered guests. She watched silently as the estate's renowned head chef, Jean-Luc, a man with a perpetually haughty demeanor and a repertoire of elaborate French fare, commanded the opulent kitchen. Lila Mae sometimes longed to simply cook for Clara, sensing a kindred spirit in the quiet, sad child, but knew her place. The days at the Vance estate blurred into a routine of quiet service and unspoken dreams. Lila Mae found solace in the methodical rhythm of her work, in the scent of lemon polish on fine wood, in the organized chaos of the pantry she kept meticulously stocked. But it was in the kitchen, when she had a rare moment to herself, that she truly came alive. Chopping vegetables, stirring sauces, watching dough rise, these acts were a meditation, a connection to her grandmother, a quiet rebellion against the invisibility that defined her public persona. She would often sneak away to write new recipes in Grandma Rose's book, tiny notes scribbled in the margins, adapting old family favorites with a subtle modern twist, imagining a day when her food could do more than just sustain. She dreamed of a world where her hands, usually occupied with dusting or scrubbing, could instead craft a meal that spoke volumes, a dish that transcended its ingredients to become an experience, a memory. She knew the power of food, how it could bridge divides, comfort sorrows, and even spark joy. She just hadn't found the stage for her quiet artistry yet. The house, usually a bastion of quiet order, began to simmer with a low hum of anxiety as a crucial week approached. Elias was preparing for a multi-million-dollar merger with a Japanese conglomerate, a deal that could redefine Vance Technologies. Every detail was meticulously planned, especially the crucial business dinner meant to seal the deal. The menu, designed by Jean-Luc, was a complex symphony of French haute cuisine intended to impress. Then, on a frigid Tuesday afternoon, a mere few hours before the dinner, chaos erupted. A heated argument fueled by Jean-Luc's volatile temper and Elias's uncompromising demands echoed through the normally hushed kitchen. Jean-Luc, in a spectacular fit of pique, had abruptly quit, slamming out of the estate in a huff, leaving the elaborate menu in shambles and the remaining staff in a state of panicked paralysis. Simultaneously, another, more familiar crisis was unfolding. Clara, pale and withdrawn as ever, had refused every dinner option presented to her by her latest nanny. Her small face was set in a defiant pout, her delicate frame seeming to shrink further into herself. The nanny, close to tears, pleaded with Elias, who, already stressed to his breaking point by the chef debacle, felt a familiar surge of helpless frustration. He paced his study, a stark, modern space filled with glass and steel, the frantic whispers of his staff barely audible through the thick oak doors. He needed a chef, and he needed one now. He needed a miracle. And in that moment of sheer desperation, a desperate, almost instinctive thought, born of overheard staff chatter about Lila Mae's unexpectedly delicious home-cooked dishes, surfaced. He had barely registered her presence in the house before, let alone her cooking. But the panic was a cold, sharp thing, and Elias, uncharacteristic impulsiveness taking hold, made a decision that would unravel the precise, predictable tapestry of his life. He sent for the maid. The message, relayed through the harried head of the house staff, reached Lila Mae as she was meticulously polishing a set of antique silver candlesticks. Her heart gave a sudden, surprised lurch. Elias Vance rarely, if ever, summoned staff directly, let alone a mere housemaid. A knot of apprehension tightened in her stomach, but beneath it, a tiny flicker of something else, something akin to hope, began to glow. She straightened her uniform, smoothed her apron, and with a quiet, practiced grace walked towards the main kitchen, the scent of expensive cleaning products still clinging faintly to her. The large, minimalist space, usually a symphony of precise movements and hushed commands, was now a tableau of scattered ingredients and frantic whispers. And there, standing amidst the chaos, his back to her, looking out at the snow-covered grounds with an air of barely contained frustration, was Elias Vance. He turned slowly as she approached, his gaze sweeping over her, dismissive, impatient, yet undeniably assessing. She gripped her hands lightly in front of her, bracing herself. She knew, with a certainty that settled deep in her bones, that this was not just about dinner. This was about everything. Elias Vance finally turned, his gaze usually sharp and assessing, now tinged with a weariness that rarely showed in his formidable demeanor. His dark eyes, accustomed to scanning market data and acquisition targets, swept over Lila Mae, pausing for an almost imperceptible moment on her uniform, then her quiet, expectant face. She felt the weight of his scrutiny, not unkind, but utterly devoid of recognition, as if she were a new algorithm he was attempting to process. "Lila Mae," he began, his voice crisp, betraying none of the panic that had seized the household just minutes before. "I understand you have some capabilities in the kitchen." The word capabilities hung in the air, a polite understatement that felt more like a thinly veiled doubt. He gestured vaguely at the opulent state-of-the-art kitchen, now a scene of abandoned ingredients and half-prepared dishes. "Jean-Luc, our head chef, has departed permanently. Can I have a crucial dinner in precisely 3 hours with a delegation from Kyoto? A multi-million-dollar merger hinges on this meal. They expect nothing short of perfection, a culinary experience that reflects the caliber of Vance Technologies." He paused, his eyes narrowing slightly. The menu was elaborate, French haute cuisine. "Can you manage?" Lila Mae's heart thrummed against her ribs, a wild drumbeat against the silence of the vast kitchen. Manage? She had managed her ailing mother's care, managed to leave everything she knew behind, managed to navigate this intimidating world where her very presence felt like a minor transgression. But this was different. This was not just cooking. This was the Vance Empire, built on precision and image. She could feel his unspoken questions, the dismissive assumptions simmering beneath his controlled exterior. He saw the blue uniform, the practical apron, the figure that society deemed too much. He saw a maid, a pair of hands for scrubbing and dusting, not for plating a dish worthy of a multi-million-dollar deal. A lifetime of being judged, not by her skill or her heart, but by the curves of her body, welled up inside her. She remembered the cruel whispers from school, the snide remarks from distant relatives, the way people's eyes would slide past her, seeing only her size, never her soul. Here in this gleaming, sterile kitchen, under the penetrating gaze of Elias Vance, it all converged. The pressure to simply exist, to be quietly competent yet ultimately invisible, was immense. But beneath the familiar ache of insecurity, a different kind of feeling stirred, a quiet, burning indignation. She met his gaze not with subservience but with a defiance that surprised even herself. The words, raw and unbidden, spilled from her lips before she could censor them, a truth born of years of silent observation and deep-seated pain. "No one marries a fat girl, boss, but I can cook." The statement hung in the air, a sharp, unexpected crack in the polished facade of the Vance estate. The few remaining staff members, discreetly trying to make themselves scarce, froze. Elias Vance, a man rarely surprised by anything outside the volatile world of tech, visibly flinched. His brow furrowed, a flicker of something unreadable passing through his eyes, shock perhaps, or a grudging respect for her stark honesty. He had expected an affirmation of capability, a nervous apology, or even a resignation. He had not expected this raw, unvarnished truth, delivered with such quiet, almost devastating dignity. It was a blend of vulnerability and strength that pierced through his corporate veneer, reaching something deeper within him that had long been dormant. He paused, a long, drawn-out moment that stretched like elastic. The snow continued to fall outside, soundlessly blanketing the world. He looked at her, truly looked at her. Perhaps for the first time, he saw not just a maid, but a woman with a fire in her eyes, a quiet resolve etched into her features. His initial transactional response, when it came, carried an unforeseen weight, a subtle shift in the gravitational pull of their encounter. "Then cook for me, Lila," he stated, his voice regaining its crisp certainty, but with a new, almost imperceptible undertone of challenge. "Cook for them. If your food can change minds, perhaps it can change more than that." That single reply, uttered in the quiet of his state-of-the-art kitchen, was the moment her life irrevocably shifted. The weight lifted, replaced by a surge of adrenaline, a profound sense of purpose. This wasn't just about a meal anymore. It was about proving something, not just to Elias Vance, but to every critical voice, every dismissive glance she had ever endured. This was about honoring Grandma Rose's legacy, about feeding souls. Lila Mae nodded, her hands, which moments ago had felt heavy and uncertain, now tingled with a familiar energy. "Yes, Mr. Vance." He gave a curt nod, then turned and walked swiftly from the kitchen, leaving her alone amidst the disarray, the ticking clock, and the colossal expectation that now rested squarely on her shoulders. For a moment, she stood still, taking a deep, fortifying breath. The scent of panic still lingered in the air, but she pushed it away, focusing on the aromas that truly mattered, the faint ghost of herbs, the promise of warmth. She didn't waste another second. Jean-Luc's elaborate French menu, with its delicate sauces and obscure ingredients, was useless. Lila Mae knew she couldn't replicate it, nor did she want to. Her strength lay elsewhere, in the deep, comforting traditions passed down through generations. She moved with a quiet intensity, her years of unspoken dreams and inherited culinary wisdom now channeled into every precise movement. She threw open the pantry doors, her eyes scanning the shelves, not for exotic components, but for the humble, honest ingredients that could be transformed into something extraordinary. She wouldn't attempt to mimic French haute cuisine. Instead, she leaned into her heritage, a fusion of Southern comfort and American classics, elevated with sophisticated techniques she had quietly mastered in her solitary kitchen experiments. Her hands, surprisingly deft and quick, flew across the expansive marble countertops. She envisioned a menu that blended soulful warmth with unexpected elegance, a culinary narrative that would speak a universal language of care and authenticity. First, a rich, slow-braised short rib. She pulled out prime cuts of beef, searing them to a perfect mahogany crust, before nestling them into a Dutch oven with aromatic vegetables, deep red wine, and a secret blend of herbs and spices from Grandma Rose's faded notes. It would cook low and slow, its aroma filling the house with a promise of profound tenderness. Next, creamy grits. Not the simple breakfast staple, but elevated with wild mushrooms she'd found in the pantry, a whisper of truffle oil, and a delicate chicken stock she'd discovered simmering on the back burner, a fortunate remnant of Jean-Luc's preparations. The Japanese delegates she knew valued subtlety and umami. These grits, she imagined, would be a revelation. And for dessert, something truly comforting, something that spoke of home and memory, a perfectly crusted apple pie. She worked quickly, her hands instinctively forming the buttery, flaky crust, her mind recalling the countless times she'd watched her grandmother do the same. Fresh apples, spiced with cinnamon and nutmeg, tumbled into the golden shell. It wasn't fancy, not by Greenwich standards, but it would be real. As the hours dwindled, the sterile, minimalist main kitchen began its transformation. The sharp, acrid scent of Jean-Luc's abandoned culinary pretensions faded, replaced by the rich, complex perfumes of Lila Mae's creations. The deep, savory notes of the short ribs simmering, the earthy fragrance of mushrooms sautéing, the sweet, warming spice of apples baking. It was a symphony of aromas that began to permeate the entire mansion, weaving its way through the hushed corridors and polished rooms. The Vance estate, usually a beacon of cool, detached elegance, now pulsed with an unexpected warmth, a subtle, irresistible invitation that spoke of hearth and home. The other staff members, initially skeptical, found themselves drawn to the kitchen, their hurried glances turning into lingering looks of curiosity. They watched, fascinated, as Lila Mae moved with an effortless grace, her focus absolute, her quiet determination radiating from her like heat from a hearth. The frantic energy that had pervaded the kitchen had dissipated, replaced by a calm, purposeful hum. If you're finding yourself captivated by Lila Mae's quiet strength and her powerful culinary magic, don't forget to show your support. A quick like or a thoughtful comment helps us share these incredible stories with even more people. Share this with someone who needs to be reminded of their own hidden talents. The first limousine crunched on the gravel driveway precisely at 7 o'clock. Elias, impeccably dressed and composed, greeted the Japanese delegates, 3 distinguished gentlemen in tailored suits, their expressions polite but reserved. The weight of the merger, the reputation of his company, hung heavy in the air. He led them to the formal dining room, a cavernous space usually filled with polite, often tense conversation. The initial surprise from the delegates was palpable as the first course arrived. This was not French haute cuisine. It was different. The waitstaff, expertly trained, presented the dishes with a newfound reverence, almost as if they too had been touched by the magic emanating from the kitchen. The slow braised short ribs falling off the bone melted in the mouth, their rich umami flavor a complex revelation. The creamy grits, elevated with wild mushrooms and truffle oil, were a comforting yet sophisticated accompaniment, a delicate dance of textures and tastes. The Japanese delegates, initially maintaining their formal composure, slowly began to relax. Their conversations, initially focused on the intricacies of the merger, softened. Over shared plates, common ground was found in the unexpected intimacy of a truly heartfelt meal. The food wasn't just delicious, it spoke a language of warmth, authenticity, and care that transcended cultural barriers, slowly chipping away at the business formality. Elias watched, a flicker of bewildered relief in his eyes, but the most significant and perhaps most miraculous transformation was occurring not in the dining room, but just outside it. Clara, who had been grudgingly brought to the table by her nanny for her own pre-approved bland meal, was drawn by the enticing scents. She usually approached mealtime with a grim, defiant set to her jaw. Tonight, however, the aroma of cinnamon, cooked apples, and savory richness was too powerful to ignore. Her small nose wrinkled, then twitched. She hesitantly approached the doorway, her large, sad eyes fixed on the plates of food being served to the delegates. Lila Mae, emerging from the kitchen for a brief moment to supervise the dessert service, caught sight of Clara. A gentle smile touched her lips, a rare, unbidden warmth filling her chest. She approached the child quietly, holding a small plate with a tiny spoonful of the creamy grits. "Would you like to try, sweet pea?" she whispered, her voice soft and inviting. Clara, usually recoiling from any new food, looked at the spoonful with a mixture of suspicion and curiosity. The smell was heavenly. She hesitantly took the spoonful, her small hand trembling slightly. She put it to her lips, tasted, and a small, almost imperceptible widening of her eyes was her only reaction. Then she took another, and another. A small tentative smile finally graced her lips, a sight Elias hadn't seen in months, perhaps even years. He caught sight of it from the dining room, a glimpse of his daughter's long-dormant joy, and it was like a tiny crack appearing in the carefully constructed emotional walls he had built around himself. This immediate, undeniable connection between Lila Mae's food and his daughter's happiness began to chip away at Elias's carefully constructed emotional walls. He started to observe Lila Mae, not as another employee, not as a woman whose frankness had momentarily disarmed him, but as an individual. He watched her from the periphery of his vision, discreetly, as she moved through the kitchen, overseeing the final touches of the meal, her focus absolute, her quiet confidence unwavering. He noticed the elegance of her posture, the graceful curve of her neck as she leaned over a dish, the undeniable magic she wove with simple ingredients. He saw the genuine kindness in her eyes as she offered Clara another bite of pie. These were things he had been too blind, too distracted, or too emotionally distant to perceive before. His gaze lingered, longer than was professional, longer than was logical. He was a man of facts and figures, of precision and order, yet here was a woman, a maid, who had, with nothing more than her hands and her heart, conjured not just a meal, but a profound shift in atmosphere, a tangible warmth that had been absent from his home for far too long. He saw how Clara, after finishing her small plate of grits, now trailed after Lila Mae, her small hand reaching out to touch the hem of the maid's apron, sharing childish secrets in hushed tones, finding solace and joy in her presence. It was a bond that grew stronger with each lovingly prepared meal, a silent, undeniable testament to Lila Mae's unique gift. But Lila Mae's unexpected rise, her quiet triumph in Elias Vance's prestigious kitchen, did not go unnoticed by those accustomed to their established positions within his orbit. Her presence, once invisible, was now undeniably prominent, and for some, intensely threatening. Vivian Sterling, a polished socialite with an aristocratic pedigree and a calculated ambition to become the next Mrs. Vance, observed Lila Mae with a venomous disdain. A Vivian who had envisioned herself seamlessly stepping into the role of Elias's sophisticated partner, viewed Lila Mae as a grotesque interloper, an unsightly crack in the pristine veneer of her carefully constructed future. Her sharp, calculating eyes followed Lila Mae's movements, a cold fury brewing beneath her perfectly composed exterior. Adding to the simmering resentment was Elias's former head chef, Jean-Luc, now unemployed and seething with envy, his professional pride mortally wounded. He had his own network within the opulent circles of Greenwich, a web of sycophantic staff members who benefited from his patronage. These individuals, along with Vivian, began to weave an insidious web of subtle sabotage and malicious gossip. They whispered behind cupped hands, their words dripping with condescension, about Lila Mae's humble origins, her lack of formal culinary training, and, most cruelly, reiterated the fat girl epithet, implying she was a manipulative opportunist attempting to trap Elias through his impressionable daughter. The quiet warmth Lila Mae brought to the mansion was, for them, an unwelcome invasion, a disruption to the carefully orchestrated hierarchy they had always known. The seeds of a storm were being sown, and Lila Mae, still basking in the quiet glow of her initial triumph, was unknowingly walking into its path. The whispers started subtly, like a soft snowfall that eventually became a blizzard. At first, Lila Mae barely noticed them, too engrossed in her newfound purpose. Elias, having witnessed the undeniable magic she wove with food, especially with Clara, had made good on his word, not just for the delegates, but for his daughter. Clara's once picky appetite had transformed into a genuine enthusiasm for Lila Mae's meals. She would seek out Lila Mae in the kitchen, her small hands helping to stir, her quiet laughter echoing in a space that had once been silent. For Elias, This was more than just good food. It was a visible healing in his daughter, a return of a light he thought had been extinguished forever. He began to invite Lila Mae to consult on Clara's daily meals, then to plan small intimate dinners for close business associates. Her unassuming brilliance, her ability to make the complex feel comforting, was undeniable. But with every step Lila Mae took out of the shadows, Vivian Sterling's resentment deepened, calcifying into a tangible malice. Vivian saw Elias's growing appreciation for Lila Mae not as a recognition of talent, but as a direct affront, a grotesque mockery of her own carefully cultivated image. Her carefully manicured nails dug into her palms as she watched Elias, once so impervious, soften in Lila Mae's presence. The image of Elias's future wife, gracing society pages, hosting lavish galas, was hers, and this fat maid was threatening to shatter it. Vivian, a master of social manipulation, began to orchestrate her campaign of sabotage. She didn't stoop to crude confrontations. Her methods were far more insidious. She started by subtly spreading rumors to the other household staff, painting Lila Mae as an opportunist, a woman using her peasant charms to worm her way into Elias's affections. "Isn't it just a quaint," she'd purr, a venomous smile playing on her lips, "how some people try to climb the social ladder on the backs of others' misfortunes," especially with that rather bold remark she made to Mr. Vance. "No one marries a fat girl." Oh, the theatrics. The seeds of doubt, once planted, found fertile ground among the envious and the sycophantic. Jean-Luc, his pride still smarting, found eager ears for his exaggerated tales of Lila Mae's lack of professionalism and unsophisticated palate. He spread stories of how she used common ingredients and how her cooking was a blight on the Vance estate's culinary reputation. These whispers, amplified by Vivian's social network, began to circulate beyond the estate, reaching the ears of society bloggers and gossip columnists who relished any scandal involving the reclusive Elias Vance. The sabotage escalated from whispers to actions. Ingredients for Lila Mae's meals would mysteriously go missing from the pantry, only to reappear hours later, subtly spoiled. Pots and pans would be misplaced, essential tools hidden. Once, a crucial, time-sensitive dessert for a small dinner party nearly failed because the oven temperature had been deliberately tampered with. Lila Mae, with her quiet resilience, managed to adapt, to improvise, to pull victory from the jaws of defeat every single time. She never accused, never complained, simply worked harder, her eyes sharp, her movements more deliberate. She knew the source of these petty acts, felt the icy stares of Vivian's allies, but she refused to give them the satisfaction of a reaction. Her focus remained on the food, on Clara's joyful smiles, on the subtle, undeniable warmth that was slowly seeping back into the sterile grandeur of the mansion. Elias, still largely immersed in his corporate world, initially dismissed the rumors. He was a man of logic, of empirical evidence, and the food Lila Mae produced, and more importantly, Clara's renewed zest for life, were irrefutable facts. He valued results, and Lila Mae delivered them consistently. Yet the relentless whispers, the veiled accusations that she was an unsophisticated gold digger, began to sow tiny seeds of doubt, like insidious weeds taking root in dry soil. He found himself, despite his logical mind, looking at Lila Mae differently, searching for signs of the opportunist they described. He hated himself for it, for allowing such baseless gossip to penetrate his carefully constructed rationale. But then he would see Clara. He would see her skip into the kitchen, her pale face alight with an animation he hadn't witnessed in years, her small hand instinctively reaching for Lila Mae's apron, her head tilted up, listening intently as Lila Mae explained the magic of yeast or the perfect way to dice an onion. He saw the genuine, unfeigned affection in Clara's eyes and the reciprocal, gentle care in Lila Mae's. He would watch Lila Mae wipe a smudge of flour from Clara's cheek or patiently teach her how to crimp the edge of a pie crust. In those moments, the whispers faded into static. He saw pure, unadulterated kindness, integrity, and a boundless heart. The bond between them was palpable, a bright, undeniable beacon of warmth that had transformed his daughter. The more he observed, the more he found himself drawn to Lila Mae's quiet strength. He noticed how she never sought praise, never boasted, simply did her work with a profound dignity. He saw the subtle elegance in her movements, The way her eyes would light up when a dish was perfectly balanced, the genuine smile that touched her lips when Clara devoured a meal. He found himself seeking her out, not just for meal planning, but for small, seemingly insignificant conversations about seasonal produce or the nuances of regional cooking. He found her perspective refreshing, her insights grounded in a realism that was a stark contrast to the superficiality of his own world. He started to see past the uniform, past the societal labels, to the woman beneath, intelligent, kind, resilient. The quiet magic she wove in the kitchen was now weaving its way into the very fabric of his home and, unexpectedly, into the carefully guarded corners of his own heart. The climax of this escalating corporate intrigue and personal attacks was orchestrated to occur during a critical gala hosted at the Vance estate. The event was grand, designed to celebrate the successful merger with the Japanese conglomerate and to officially launch Elias's new philanthropic initiatives, a night meant to solidify his image as a visionary and a benevolent titan of industry. The crème de la crème of Greenwich society filled the opulent ballroom, their jewels sparkling under the chandeliers, their laughter echoing against the priceless art. Elias, standing on a raised platform, began his speech, a powerful address about innovation, global partnership, and the future. Lila Mae, overseeing the dessert service, moved discreetly among the tables, ensuring every exquisite pastry and delicate confection was perfectly presented. She wore her uniform as always, but tonight she had allowed herself a subtle elegance. Her braids were impeccably woven, and her lipstick, of vibrant red, echoed the quiet strength she carried within. The kitchen staff, under her calm direction, worked like a well-oiled machine, their movements precise, their faces reflecting a newfound pride in their work. Vivian Sterling, resplendent in a gown that shimmered with calculated opulence, watched Lila Mae with a predator's gaze. Her moment had arrived. As Elias paused for emphasis in his speech, Vivian subtly signaled a hidden technician who, with a flick of a switch, diverted a spotlight from Elias to Lila Mae, illuminating her starkly against the backdrop of the glittering ballroom. The sudden, unexpected shift in light drew every eye to Lila Mae, who froze, momentarily blinded by the sudden glare. Then Vivian, with a saccharine smile that didn't quite reach her cold eyes, stepped forward, her voice amplified by the sudden hush in the room, cutting through the silence like a knife. "Oh, look, there she is," she chirped, her voice falsely sweet. "Our little culinary genius, the new sensation. Tell me, dear," she addressed Lila Mae directly, her tone dripping with condescension, "how does one go from scrubbing floors to commanding the kitchen of the esteemed Elias Vance, and so quickly? Do tell us your secret. Was it perhaps a particularly charming dish, or was it that unforgettable line you delivered to Mr. Vance, something about—" She feigned a thoughtful pause, then her voice hardened, echoing through the now silent ballroom. "No one marries a fat girl, boss. But I can cook, wasn't it? Such frankness for a maid. One wonders what you were truly cooking up, besides dinner, of course." The opulent room fell silent, a collective gasp rippling through the crowd. The air grew thick with tension, with judgment, with the sickening delight of public humiliation. Elias, initially caught off guard, felt a surge of cold fury, a primal instinct to protect. He looked at Lila Mae, standing there under the harsh spotlight, her head held high, a flush of embarrassment rising on her cheeks, but an unyielding strength in her gaze. She was cornered, exposed yet unbroken. He saw not fear, but a quiet, powerful dignity. Then he looked at Clara, his daughter, who had been nestled at his side, her small hand instinctively reaching for his, her eyes now wide with fear and confusion as she witnessed the cruelty unfolding before her. Clara's small, vulnerable face, mirroring Lila Mae's quiet shame, was the final catalyst. In that pivotal, crystal-clear moment, Elias saw not a maid, not a fat girl, not a social climber, but a woman of profound talent, unshakable dignity, and boundless heart. He saw the light she had brought back into his daughter's eyes, the warmth she had brought back into his sterile home. He saw truth. He walked calmly from the platform, his every step deliberate, resonating with an authority that silenced even Vivian's smug smile. He moved directly to Lila Mae's side, placing a hand on her back, a gesture of silent, unequivocal support. His voice, when he spoke, was low, controlled, but resonated with a power that commanded absolute attention. It silenced not just Vivian, but the entire murmuring ballroom. Authenticity, Elias began, his gaze sweeping over the assembled guests, then settling firmly on Vivian, is a rare and precious commodity in a world obsessed with superficiality. Genuine worth, true character, cannot be measured by pedigree or appearance, but by kindness, integrity, and the courage to be vulnerable. He paused, his hand still resting on Lila Mae's back, a silent shield. This woman, he continued, his voice rising, Lila Mae Thompson possesses all of these qualities in abundance. He then praised her culinary genius, detailing how her food had not only secured his most important business deal, a feat he never truly believed possible through gastronomy, but more importantly, had healed his daughter's broken spirit and brought warmth back into his once cold, empty home. He spoke of the quiet revolution she had enacted in his life, in Clara's life, a revolution of joy and genuine connection. True value, he declared, his gaze unwavering as it fixed on Vivian, lies not in superficial appearances or societal judgments, but in the ability to nourish both body and soul. And that, Mrs. Sterling, is a talent far more valuable than any social standing. He then delivered the final devastating blow. Lila Mae Thompson is not merely an employee. She is an invaluable member of my family, and I will personally ensure her protection from such baseless, cruel attacks. A hush fell over the room once more, different this time, filled with awe and shock. Then Elias made his definitive announcement, his voice ringing with absolute certainty. Effective immediately, Lila Mae will not only be taking over as head chef of this estate, but she will also be developing a new culinary venture under the Vance umbrella, leveraging her unique talents on a much grander scale. The ballroom erupted in applause, not just for the announcement, but for the profound shift in Elias Vance. It was an acknowledgement of his own transformation, a public declaration of his unwavering support for a woman who had dared to be her authentic self. Vivian Sterling, her face now a mask of cold fury and humiliation, was stunned into silence, her carefully constructed world crumbling around her. The whispers returned, but this time they were not for Lila Mae, but for Vivian, whose cruel scheme had backfired spectacularly. The night, meant to celebrate Elias, became a testament to Lila Mae's quiet triumph, a validation of her worth, and the undeniable power of a single, heartfelt meal. And for Lila Mae, standing tall beside Elias Vance, a new chapter, unforeseen and breathtaking, had just begun. The path ahead was still uncertain, but the chilling distance between their worlds had, in one defining moment, irrevocably closed. The immediate aftermath of Elias Vance's declaration was a whirlwind. The applause in the ballroom had been thunderous, a collective roar of approval that seemed to cleanse the air of Vivian Sterling's toxic malice. Vivian herself, utterly mortified and exposed, made a hasty, undignified retreat, her high heels clicking a furious rhythm across the marble floor. Her co-conspirators among the staff, their faces pale with shock and fear, quickly melted into the background, their schemes thoroughly unraveled. The society bloggers, initially salivating over the prospect of a scandalous public humiliation, now furiously scribbled notes about a dramatic tale of redemption and unexpected triumph. Lila Mae, though overwhelmed, felt a profound sense of vindication, a quiet strength settling deep within her bones. Standing beside Elias, his hand still a comforting, solid presence on her back, she met the gazes of the admiring guests with a newfound confidence. The spotlight, once a weapon of humiliation, now felt like a warm embrace. She had not sought this attention, but she would not shrink from it. When Elias gently guided her away from the throng, towards a quieter corner of the estate, she went willingly, her heart still thrumming with the magnitude of the moment. "Lila Mae," Elias began, his voice softer now, stripped of its public authority, filled with an emotion she hadn't heard before. I apologize for allowing such petty cruelties to occur under my roof, and for not seeing what was so plainly in front of me." His eyes, usually so guarded, held a vulnerability that surprised her. "You have brought more warmth and genuine happiness to this house, and to Clara, than I ever thought possible. And your food," he trailed off, a faint smile touching his lips, "your food is nothing short of extraordinary." He then reiterated his offer, not just for the professional opportunity, but for the profound acceptance and respect he now openly displayed. "The culinary venture," he explained, his eyes alight with a vision she could only begin to imagine, "will be yours to shape. your recipes, your philosophy, your unique talent. We will build it together, under the Vance umbrella, and share your magic with the world." Lila Mae looked into his eyes, seeing not just the formidable CEO, but a man who had, in one defining moment, shed the layers of his grief and corporate armor to stand unequivocally for what was right. She accepted his offer, not just for the professional opportunity, not just for the chance to fulfill a lifetime of quiet dreams, but for the unexpected acceptance and respect he now openly displayed. It was a partnership born of integrity, a connection forged in fire. The next few months were a whirlwind of activity, a thrilling blur of creativity and corporate strategy. Vivian Sterling and her allies faced swift repercussions. Jean-Luc found himself blacklisted from every reputable kitchen in Greenwich. The sycophantic staff were quietly let go. Elias, with a ruthless efficiency he usually reserved for hostile takeovers, ensured that the malicious gossip was publicly discredited, restoring Lila Mae's name with the same fierce protectiveness he had displayed at the gala. Lila Mae, now officially the head chef of the Vance estate, embraced her new role with a quiet zeal. The kitchen, once a battleground of sabotage, became her sanctuary, a place where her culinary artistry could flourish unfettered. She designed new menus, each dish a testament to her heritage, blending sophisticated techniques with the soulful warmth of classic American comfort food. She trained the remaining staff, instilling in them a sense of pride and purpose, transforming the atmosphere from one of hushed duty to one of genuine collaboration. The culinary venture, which Elias insisted she name, became the Hearth and Home Kitchen. It quickly gained national acclaim, celebrated for its authentic, soul-satisfying dishes that spoke a language of warmth, tradition, and profound care. Food critics raved about the unexpected depth of flavor, the comforting familiarity elevated to an art form. People flocked to the pop-up events and exclusive dining experiences that the Hearth and Home Kitchen hosted, eager to taste the food that had captivated Elias Vance and, more importantly, healed his daughter. Clara, now a constant presence in the kitchen, was Lila Mae's shadow and her most enthusiastic taste tester. The once withdrawn child blossomed, her laughter echoing through the large estate, her eyes bright with a joy that had once seemed impossible. Lila Mae taught her to measure, to stir, to recognize the delicate balance of flavors. Their bond deepened with each shared moment, each lovingly prepared meal. Clara, in turn, became a bridge between Lila Mae and Elias, softening the edges of their professional relationship, weaving a subtle thread of connection between them. Elias, for his part, found himself increasingly drawn to Lila Mae, not just for her talent but for the woman she was. He sought her out not just for business discussions, but for genuine conversation. He found her perspective refreshing, her wisdom grounded, her quiet strength a balm to his often turbulent world. He saw how she effortlessly balanced grace with resilience, how her generosity of spirit touched everyone around her. He noticed the way the light caught her golden braids, the genuine kindness in her eyes, the gentle curve of her smile. He found himself lingering in the kitchen, drawn by the warmth, the laughter, and the undeniable sense of home that Lila Mae had so effortlessly created. Their professional partnership deepened, slowly, organically, into an undeniable, profound love. Elias, the formidable CEO, had found in Lila Mae the warmth, authenticity, and emotional anchor he had unknowingly yearned for since his wife's passing. She saw past his formidable exterior, recognizing the vulnerability and quiet longing beneath, and she, in him, discovered a love that saw beyond her insecurities, cherishing her not for a superficial image, but for her true self, her talent, her heart, her generous spirit. It was a love built on shared respect, mutual admiration, and the unexpected joy of two disparate worlds finding perfect harmony. Their story became a quiet legend in Greenwich, a testament to true worth found in the most unexpected places. It was a tale whispered with awe, proving that superficiality rarely held a candle to genuine substance. 2 years after that fateful gala, on a quiet, snow-dusted morning, reminiscent of the day Lila Mae had stood on the threshold with a coffee tray, Elias and Lila Mae exchanged vows. The ceremony was intimate, held on the very grounds of the Greenwich estate that had witnessed their dramatic beginning. Clara, now a vibrant and joyful 8-year-old, radiant in a white dress, served as their flower girl. scattering petals with an exuberance that reflected the happiness blooming within their newly formed family. Their wedding, unlike the opulent galas Elias usually hosted, was a celebration of genuine connection, of quiet love blossoming from unexpected soil. Lila Mae wore a custom-made gown that celebrated her figure, not hid it, designed by a small independent designer she admired. Her blonde braids were intertwined with delicate white flowers, a nod to her Vermont roots. Elias, his eyes shining with a warmth that had been absent for years, looked at her not with adoration, but with a deep, abiding reverence. He had married not a socialite, not an image, but a woman whose soul shone brighter than any diamond. Years later, their life was a picture of domestic contentment. The Hearth and Home kitchen had expanded, with charming, acclaimed restaurants in New York City and Boston, and a popular line of artisanal pantry staples. Lila Mae, still the heart and soul of the business, was a celebrated culinary genius, a successful entrepreneur, and most importantly, the beloved matriarch of a family built on love, respect, and the profound understanding that the most transformative changes often begin with the simplest, most authentic gestures. They often sat together in the sprawling, now genuinely warm and inviting kitchen of the Greenwich estate, watching Clara, now a vivacious 10-year-old, eagerly devour Lila Mae's latest creation. Clara was no longer picky. Her palate was as adventurous as her spirit. The mansion, once cold and imposing, now hummed with life, laughter, and the constant, comforting aroma of delicious food. One blustery autumn evening, as Lila Mae was preparing dinner, Clara, now a tall, bright-eyed girl, looked up from helping her chop vegetables. "Mama," she asked, her voice thoughtful, "is it true that when you first came here you said, 'No one marries a fat girl, boss, but I can cook'?" Lila Mae paused, a gentle smile playing on her lips. She looked at Elias, who was leaning against the counter, a fond, amused look in his eyes. "It is, sweet pea," she confirmed. "And your father's reply changed everything." Clara giggled. "He changed it because he knew you were the best cook ever, right?" Elias stepped forward, wrapping an arm around Lila Mae's waist, pulling her gently against him. He kissed the top of her head. "He changed it," he corrected softly, his gaze meeting Lila Mae's, filled with a love that transcended words, because he realized her cooking was only a small part of the extraordinary woman she truly was. The fat girl who could cook had indeed become the celebrated culinary genius, the successful entrepreneur, and the beloved matriarch of a family built on love, respect, and the understanding that the most profound changes often begin with the simplest, most authentic gestures. Her story was a powerful reminder that true value lies not in external appearances or societal expectations, but in the unwavering strength of one's spirit, the boundless kindness of one's heart, and the courage to be authentically, unapologetically oneself. It was a story not just about food, but about finding nourishment for the soul in the most unexpected places, proving that love, in its purest form, sees beyond the surface and embraces the whole, extraordinary person within. The years that followed solidified the Vance household into a vibrant, loving home, a stark contrast to the sterile environment Lila Mae had first encountered. The Hearth and Home kitchen flourished, evolving from a successful local venture into a national phenomenon. Lila Mae, with Elias's unwavering support and sharp business acumen, expanded her empire with grace and ingenuity. Cookbooks bearing her smiling face, adorned with those signature braids, became bestsellers, sharing her philosophy of soulful, authentic cooking with millions. Her television show, a refreshing antidote to the often pretentious world of gourmet cooking, garnered a loyal following, celebrating the joy of simple, honest ingredients and the power of food to connect, comfort, and heal. Yet despite her burgeoning fame, Lila Mae remained grounded, her spirit as warm and unpretentious as her Vermont roots. She continued to cook daily for her family, the kitchen remaining the true heart of their home. Clara, now a bright and inquisitive teenager, often joined her not just as a helper, but as a budding culinary apprentice, showing a flair for flavors and a passion for food that mirrored her mother's. Their bond was a beautiful tapestry of shared secrets, laughter, and the comforting rhythm of working side by side. Elias, too, had undergone a profound transformation. The ruthless tech CEO still existed, his business ventures continued to thrive, but the impenetrable shell of ambition and grief had melted away, revealing a man capable of immense warmth, deep love, and a newfound appreciation for the simple joys of life. He learned to slow down, to savor moments, to truly connect. He no longer saw the world through the cold, calculating lens of data, but through the vibrant, empathetic perspective that Lila Mae had introduced him to. Their marriage was a partnership of equals, a beautiful dance between ambition and authenticity, logic and emotion. Lila Mae's mother, though still frail, had experienced a remarkable uplift in spirit and health, nurtured by her daughter's success and the constant stream of love and care. She spent extended periods at the Greenwich estate, marveling at the life Lila Mae had built, her eyes filled with pride. The worn recipe book, once Lila Mae's solitary comfort, was now a cherished family heirloom, its pages bearing the collaborative additions of 3 generations of women. But even in this idyll, life, in its unpredictable way, presented new challenges. The very success of the hearth and home kitchen attracted unwanted attention, a new kind of rival. Marcus Thorne, a celebrity chef known for his cutthroat competitiveness and avant-garde, often shockingly theatrical cuisine, saw Lila Mae's down-to-earth popularity as a threat to his dominance. He viewed her success as a fluke, a sentimental gimmick, and an insult to true haute cuisine. His public remarks were initially condescending, dismissing her as a country cook whose fame was merely a passing trend. The antagonism escalated when a prestigious culinary foundation announced a new award, the Golden Spoon Award for Culinary Innovation and Impact, to be presented at an exclusive televised event. Both Lila Mae and Marcus Thorne were nominated as finalists, along with 2 other renowned chefs. The stakes were incredibly high, not just for the prestige, but for the future trajectory of their brands. Marcus, unable to contain his disdain, publicly challenged Lila Mae to a head-to-head culinary showdown at the award ceremony itself, a spectacle to prove whose culinary philosophy truly reigned supreme. He framed it as a battle between rustic charm and refined artistry, a thinly veiled attack on her humble origins and ample figure. Lila Mae, initially hesitant to engage in such a public display, felt the familiar fire of indignation stir within her. Elias, witnessing her internal struggle, reminded her of the quiet strength that had defined her journey. "This isn't about proving yourself to him, my love," he said, gently cupping her face in his hands. "This is about showcasing the truth of your food, the heart you put into it. It's about standing up for authenticity against pretense." Clara, too, encouraged her, her youthful spirit brimming with confidence in her mother's abilities. "Mama, your food makes people happy. This just looks fancy." And so Lila Mae accepted the challenge. The award ceremony, held in a grand hall in New York City, became a spectacle, with the culinary showdown preceding the main award presentation. The tension was palpable. Marcus Thorne, clad in a sleek designer chef's jacket, presented a dish of molecular gastronomy, a shimmering, deconstructed creation that looked more like abstract art than food, all foam and gels and precise, minimalist arrangement. He spoke eloquently of technical prowess, of pushing boundaries, of intellectual cuisine. The judges, renowned figures in the culinary world, nodded sagely. Then it was Lila Mae's turn. She walked onto the stage with her usual quiet grace, clad in a simple, elegant chef's coat that reflected her unpretentious style. Her dish was a masterwork of apparent simplicity, a perfectly roasted herb-crusted chicken served with creamy mashed potatoes infused with browned butter and fresh chives and tender glazed carrots. It was food that evoked comfort, memory, and profound satisfaction. But beneath its familiar exterior lay an unparalleled technical skill, a meticulous balance of flavors, and a depth of taste that transcended its humble presentation. As she presented her dish, the air in the vast hall, which had been thick with the intellectual chill of Marcus's presentation, warmed perceptibly. The aroma alone was a revelation, evoking a collective sigh from the judges and audience alike. She spoke not of molecular structures or abstract concepts, but of the story behind her food, of Grandma Rose, of feeding the soul, of the power of a shared meal to create connection. She spoke of how food should be an embrace, a memory, a moment of genuine joy. Her words, delivered with quiet conviction and an undeniable sincerity, resonated deeply. The judges, a panel known for their sophisticated palates and often jaded perspectives, approached her dish. One by one they tasted. Their expressions, initially reserved, softened, a renowned food critic, known for his acerbic wit, closed his eyes for a moment, a look of profound pleasure crossing his face. Another, a chef whose Michelin-starred restaurant was notoriously difficult to impress, nodded slowly, a genuine smile replacing his usual stern expression. The verdict was clear, even before it was announced. Lila Mae's food had won. It wasn't just about taste. It was about emotion, about authenticity, about the palpable heart she poured into every dish. The Golden Spoon Award for culinary innovation and impact was, deservedly, presented to Lila Mae Thompson. The standing ovation she received was not just for her culinary talent, but for the powerful message she represented, that true innovation lies not in chasing fleeting trends, but in elevating timeless truths, and that impact comes from touching hearts, not just palates. Marcus Thorne, though visibly seething, was forced to acknowledge her victory, his grandstanding having utterly backfired. Lila Mae's acceptance speech was brief, heartfelt, and humble. She thanked Elias, Clara, her mother, and Grandma Rose, whose spirit she felt was truly present in that moment. She spoke of her journey from the quiet kitchens of Vermont to the grand stages of New York, a journey fueled by a belief in the power of good food and the enduring strength of the human spirit. She spoke of the importance of seeing beyond superficiality, of recognizing the value in everyone, regardless of appearance or background. The win cemented the Hearth and Home Kitchen as a culinary institution, not just a trend. Lila Mae's message of authentic cooking and soulful connection resonated globally. She became a beacon for aspiring chefs who dared to cook from the heart, a symbol for anyone who had ever felt underestimated. Her story was proof that true worth, true beauty, emanated from within. Lila Mae and Elias's love deepened with each passing year. Their family grew not just with Clara, but with a son Leo whose mischievous eyes and boundless energy brought even more joy and laughter into their home. Elias, watching Lila Mae with their children, seeing the gentle, patient, yet incredibly strong woman she had become, knew he was the luckiest man alive. He had found in her not just a wife, but a soulmate, a partner who had taught him the true meaning of richness, not in wealth, but in love, family, and genuine connection. The mansion in Greenwich, once a symbol of Elias's solitary ambition, had been transformed into a vibrant, bustling home, filled with the aromas of Lila Mae's cooking, the laughter of children, and the profound, comforting warmth of a family built on love. The stables, where the horses now stood in their snowy pastures, had become a beloved part of Clara and Leo's childhoods, a place of quiet reflection and joyful play. One crisp autumn afternoon, years later, Lila Mae stood on the threshold of the very same grand double doors where she had once stood, a maid with a coffee tray, feeling the cold bite of winter and the weight of unspoken judgment. Now the scent of baking bread and simmering tomato sauce wafted from her kitchen. Elias stood beside her, his arm comfortably around her waist, his head bent to whisper something that made her smile. Clara, now a confident young woman home from college, was excitedly discussing a new recipe with Leo, a boisterous teenager whose appetite seemed endless. The sun, low in the sky, cast long golden shadows across the snow-dusted grounds, illuminating the familiar landscape. Looking out, Lila Mae saw not just the sprawling estate, but the entirety of her journey. The young woman who once believed that no one would marry a fat girl had found a love that transcended all superficiality, a partnership built on profound respect and a shared vision. The maid who knew she could cook had become a culinary icon, an entrepreneur, a beloved wife and mother, and a powerful voice for authenticity. The moment of the title, "No one marries a fat girl, boss, but I can cook," had been a pivotal crossroads, a moment of raw vulnerability and defiant strength that had irrevocably altered the trajectory of her life. It had been the point of maximum emotional tension, a silent scream of injustice, but also a bold declaration of her inherent worth. From that moment, a gradual construction of understanding, respect, and ultimately love had begun, transforming not just her life, but Elias's and Clara's as well. The consequences were transformative, rich with the warmth of family, the joy of purpose, and the profound satisfaction of being truly seen and cherished for who she truly was.